Ladies and gentlemen, soccer fans here in St. Louis and around the world, welcome to the first official episode of Atleticotv, a brand new soccer show dedicated to covering the beautiful game from all angles, but with a specific focus here on what's going on in St. Louis. I'm Josh McGee, welcoming you in, and I'm here joined today by a couple of gentlemen who know a lot about the beautiful game, especially here in St. Louis, starting over here on this side, the head coach of the St. Louis Community College men's soccer team and Club Atletico St. Louis, a charter member of the NPSL, Ricky Garza. Ricky, what's going on, man?
Hey guys, glad to be here. How are you?
What's been going on with you? Obviously, it's the off season for your club, but I know that you've got a lot of business dealings and hands. What's going on here in St. Louis? Anything happening after the holidays?
Yeah, just a lot of family time, to be honest. You know, now that we're getting back into the run of things are about to go real fast. But just honestly, just enjoy the last couple of weeks with family, and it's my favorite time of year.
Over here on this side, we have the director of coaching at the St. Louis FC Academy and the head coach of the under-19 boys division, Louis Switcher. Coach, what's going on?
Not much. Here, happy to start the show, and excited and just getting off a little bit of the holidays, but good to spend time with family and everything.
Now, you guys had a bit of a big news story this midweek. You got a little bit of an update on it. A couple of your boys from the academy were called up to their national team to represent at different youth levels, but you have a little bit of an update on that.
We got two kids. One is he has a Malaysian background, so last year he got contact by the FA, and he's been in two camps already in the summer last year, and he got called up again. Unfortunately, because of COVID and everything else, the FIFA decided to cancel the World Cup under 20. So unfortunately for him, there will not be any more competition. And recently we got another kid we got contact as well from the FA from El Salvador. He has also background from El Salvador, and he was supposed to go to a camp in the beginning of the year, but like I said, the bad news about FIFA getting canceled those tournaments. But definitely it's good for them, because at least they keep in the loop of getting recruited, and also they will follow up with them obviously for future competitions.
It's a testament to the work that you guys are doing and the work that they've been putting in over the past seasons or two. So hopefully they will get another opportunity soon to represent their countries at that level, and we keep seeing more boys get recognized like that. So that's a good development. So for today's episode, obviously we missed a lot of soccer, over the holiday break. Outside of the Bundesliga, most of the other big leagues were in action. And of course, we have a few updates on some of the other leagues and some of the struggles that they have going on. We're going to have a conversation today about soccer in the pandemic. I know obviously this is the American off season, but it's not too early to be thinking ahead as to how they will make the adjustments for this year. Obviously, we know about the vaccine being rolled out, but in terms of adjustments, this will still be a season where it won't look as normal as it once has. So we're going to have a conversation about that. We're going to have a conversation about some of the other stories going on in MLS. Obviously, it's their off season, but there were a couple of big things that happened over the break that I think are newsworthy. Ricky, you're going to have a guest later on talking a little bit about what's going on here in the St. Louis community. I know there's a little bit of soccer involved with it, so excited to see what you come up with there. And also, of course, we're going to have our coaching breakdown. Obviously, we could have picked a number of matches to do this for, but I thought one that was really important this week came in Serie A. A huge clash between two of the biggest clubs in that league, with some important stakes right now with where they're at the table. And, of course, a little bit of an American influence as well. We always like to get that into our show. So, obviously, we've been very excited to be talking about some of those different topics. I didn't know if you guys had other things that maybe caught your eye during the break. Ricky, I know you said you spend a lot of time with family, but I didn't know if something kind of caught your eye in the news.
Obviously there's some crazy stuff going on in Washington that's unsettling, it's affecting everything going on in our lives. It's a crazy time we're living in, so I don't know, what do you guys think about that with the storming of the Capitol?
It's just, I want to say it's amazing, people will say, oh, it's unbelievable, but in this time and climate, it's not unbelievable. It's unfortunately what happens all the time now. It's just that it was on this large of a scale, in terms of the national exposure and where it was at, and just the number, really. But this has been popping up really in our country for the past few years now, these types of incidents. And it's all about, this stuff wouldn't happen if they didn't feel empowered and they didn't feel enabled. And I think that's the biggest problem right now, is that this type of violence and anger and just resentment is enabled and empowered by people in this country. And we're seeing it in all of the 50 states in different forms. And at this point, yeah, again, I was planning to sit down, watch a soccer match, hang out with family, and all we could do was watch what was going on TV, because it was just this, improbable in terms of the historical context of it, that had never happened before, and hopefully never happens again. But it was just a shocking scene to see.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I guess I'm more used to see more violence where I come from, but yeah, it's a shame that now this is happening here in the U.S. as well. I just try to stay as much as possible from not mixing into the politics, but yeah, definitely something that we don't want to experience. And like Ricky said, it's crazy times. I mean, I try to these holidays try to stay close to family like all year, and watching soccer. I mean, it's one of the things that shocked me in the past days, watching games with no fans. Still, it's still a thing. I mean, when are we going back to normal? Hopefully, the vaccine is gonna alleviate a little bit on everything that we do. So,
And in terms of what we do, soccer, it doesn't really blow my mind, but it still is shocking to me that we have to depend upon these athletes to be the leaders in these different areas in terms of handling the pandemic, and also speaking out about social injustice and some of these other issues. I can remember after the George Floyd death, members of the USL and St. Louis FC having to take a knee before games and make that type of statement, because the people in power who can do something about it aren't really doing anything about it.
Yeah.
So to depend upon these athletes who are really just paid, to play a game and to provide entertainment for the fans, but they're the ones, speaking out and trying to make some change. So again, hats off to them, but it just stinks that they're in that position that they have to do that.
And I think that's where it comes back to sports. I mean, sports isn't obviously the solution to the problem, but there are opportunities where sports do unite people and come together. And hopefully we do our part, at least in the sports world, to give voices and unite as best as we can.
Well, that's all the negative stuff going on, and but there is positive to be talked about, especially in the world of soccer. And we're excited to get to everything that we have on today's show, some of the guests that we'll have, some of the breakdowns that we'll have for you all. So thank you for joining us for this first episode, and we're going to get into some of the topics here right now. All right, Rick, we're going to talk a little bit about MLS. Obviously, they're in their off season right now, but a couple of the major storylines that happened over the holidays that I kind of wanted to give a little bit of a focus on and know that you got some opinions on and some expertise behind. Right now, MLS, is to prepare for this new season, actually are going to be once again back in labor negotiations, because this past week the league enforced the force majeure clause in the CBA, which basically leads to an obligated negotiation between them and the Players Association for 30 days. If a new deal and a new CBA is not reached in those 30 days, this current CBA will be terminated. They will once have to again go into really deep negotiations. And obviously, they don't have a lot of time to do that. They have a couple months here before the new season is supposed to happen, and they want to avoid a work stoppage, of course. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about behind your business acumen and basically what you do in your discussions with companies and people that you've worked for in terms of maybe having to deal with these types of either labor negotiations or just negotiating deals and building relationships. I feel like this move by the league really hurts their relationships with the players, because right now it's a very tough situation for both sides. I know about the financial impacts of the league and the money they've lost, but in terms of just having something in place during these crazy times and basically eliminating that and having to start from scratch just kind of sets things back, at least for me. And of course, again, you don't want to anger the players too much in this deal, whatever they're trying to propose. I don't know what you had your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, what's the specific financial repercussion? Are the players being asked to take less money?
So
what's the financial breakdown?
So that was the main problem, obviously, with this past labor negotiation. It was we don't know what the season is going to look like. So the league initially asked last time around about players taking a reduced salary. They did that, but they were able to negotiate in between because the league obviously wanted more, players wanted less.
Right.
They eventually were able to compromise. This deal that the MLS proposed does not involve the players taking a pay cut, but it does involve freezing compensation growth for at least a couple seasons. So the players would not be able to make more money and go on just the traditional trajectory of what they would be able to earn in the coming seasons. It would basically be extending this current CBA more than the players would want, and basically freezing that type of aspect of it, which I don't think is good for the players because, again, if you're just making the same salary that you just did previously for a very shortened season that wasn't even a full season, you have a full season now coming up.
Right.
That's lost revenue, obviously, on their part. It's quite a sacrifice to ask of them when they already were taking a big pay cut from the last time. So, again, it's just about really, for me,
Yeah.
if they're still able to figure things out financially, you don't really want to do this to your players because going into a regular season, you're going to want to build up as much positive, vibes as you possibly can with the players to have the best season you possibly can to get out of this as quickly as possible with
Right.
these negotiations. Like I said, I got a couple months till the season comes up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little bit worried that the negotiation period is just so short and that they have to figure it out so quickly.
Yeah.
You don't really know where things stand between the two.
Yeah. Well, I mean, our society and our human nature now. These owners are billionaires and they have all of these corporate money and all of these things. And when you kind of put that into relevancy of like the PPP loans, when these big companies get millions and millions of dollars and then they lay off people instead of using that money to go towards. And so here you have the same kind of setup where, well, what cuts are the actual teams and the owners doing? Are they just passing down the losses to the players, and then the players are the ones that have to deal with it? So if transparency needs to be there so the players understand it. So when you're doing these business negotiations or doing things like, in this business world, the Players Association need to see, okay, we're all cutting. We're not just eating your losses and having to do that. Because too many times the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And now these players are not poor. Let's be honest. They're getting way better pay than they had before when
Right.
they first started. However, some of these players are deciding on, should I go play here or should I take this contract here? They are doing a job. They are getting paid. They had an agreement. And so now it's going to be lessened. And I just think transparency is key. And I hope it works out. You don't want to see a player strike.
And I think that right now, in terms of the makeup of MLS, where they're at currently this time, in terms of player transfers, obviously the window is open right now, but it's going to be tough really to be able to convince players to change their entire environment when the dangers and the health, they just can't guarantee that right now. So in terms of those big fees for players, I mean, obviously you had someone like a Mark McKenzie for Philadelphia make the move to Genk, and Philadelphia get a nice little transfer fee, but everybody else can't afford really to do that right now. So that extra income from selling players is not going to be coming in. I also think about the makeup of this league. You have two clubs in Nashville, Miami, who they had their inaugural season last year. It really wasn't much of an inaugural year. I mean, it's the strangest inaugural year in the history of the league. Will now be playing in their first full season, and now you add Austin to that mix. They're going to be playing their first MLS season, and we really don't know what it's going to look like. So they're going to have the same troubles that Nashville and Miami in terms of navigating the pandemic and trying to figure out things in their very first year. So to throw all this in, and also, hey, we might have a work stoppage, it's just way too much. So I'm hoping that quick negotiation, they get something done, some type of agreement, and we begin the process of having that type of normal season.
I think we're at the point, just in life in general, we're just looking. Before we were looking at 2021, please come, and now it's 2022. And I think people that said it, know what they're doing a year ago. It's going to be a 2-year, 3-year thing. And then we'll get back to it. So let's just focus on what the glass being half full, and just keep trying to look forward. Because if you keep looking around, it's not looking so good.
Real quick, I think the other big story that people were talking about over the holiday break was the resumption of the CONCACAF Champions League. MLS has been struggling in this competition for a while, and they were able to get a team in the final. That was LAFC. They beat Cruz Azul and Club America, two of the biggest clubs in Liga MX, which was a huge accomplishment. They had the lead versus Tigres in the final in the second half, but they were unable to close the deal. They lost 2-1. MLS has not won this type of competition, the variations of it, since 2000, and teams from Liga MX have won the past 15 renditions of this tournament. So we're still seeing that dominance from the teams in Mexico over the MLS. I think the gap is closing, certainly. I think that the way LAFC have built their club and how other MLS clubs are doing, buying into younger Latin American players to come into their club and have a big impact, but we're still seeing that gap. What do you think needs to happen between the two sides? I know we've had discussions about a potential MLS Liga MX merger.
Yeah.
Would that be helpful, or again, it's just about can we get over that hump and win this tournament?
Well, for me, that's no, yeah, absolutely. It'd be amazing to see Liga MX and MLS combine leagues. It would be a superpower. I think it would develop more players. I think we would see an abundance of quality young players. I mean, just look at the youth academy, you know, here in the United States, and then having to go play Club America's youth academy and Cruz Azul. I mean, it would develop our young players by combining. It would give opportunities, and then it would overall help U.S. soccer as a whole if that happened. I think it would be nothing but positive if that happened. I would push for that in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I think that the cultural argument, I think, is starting to end. It's like, oh, it's in the Mexican team's culture. It's not America. It's not soccer. I think we pretty much have closed the gap there, especially, like I said, the makeups of the clubs now. Now it's about imposing your will on these clubs for a full 90 minutes. I thought LAFC were able to dominate mostly in that match. They just weren't able to sustain it over a 90-minute period. And again, this was a weird year. With the competition, you know, in March, they're having to postpone it for a while and then coming back to it during this holiday time. Who's to say what would have happened? But then going forward, if we're not going to have this merger, I still think MLS is on the right path. It's just in the end, can you get the right team? Can they navigate the crazy schedule? Because again, it's like the regular Champions League where you have these matches sometimes in midweek with the MLS season. Can you just find a way to navigate it, put a focus on that, don't take it lightly, and then push through? But I think we're getting close to breaking this streak. However, again, very impressive what Liga MX has been able to do here in North America, and we're probably going to see that continue going forward. But again, something interesting to look out for if we're going to do this merger or just regardless competing in this tournament. So lots still happening here in the MLS offseason. Plenty of moves still, but like you said, a couple months away from the next season starting up. Again, it's important to focus on this now because we'll be getting an MLS team here ourselves here in a couple of years. So again, plenty of things going on right now in MLS. Now I want to transition over to obviously a topic that is surrounding the soccer world and it's kind of just this huge cloud that hangs over it still, and that is the pandemic. Obviously, we're making progress on that here in the States a little bit, but there are some problems still, not just in this country, but elsewhere. The English Premier League announced this week that they had their most recorded cases since the testing was put in place. I believe it was 40 players tested positive, or players and personnel, and that obviously the pandemic over in the UK has gotten worse over the past few weeks. We've had a handful of matches already postponed, and I believe one of the postponed matches has been postponed again. So they're still having troubles with certain teams having these outbreaks. I say this and want to bring this topic to the show because we are only a month or so away removed from the beginning of this next American season, you know, with MLS, NWSL, USL, and the leagues that you guys participate in as well in terms of getting back to training, getting back to preparation. We're coming back up on that once again, and we are still having some problems here with the pandemic. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about, from your guys' perspective, you are on the ground. You're having to deal with this with your clubs in real time and having to figure out how you can get through any sort of a type of season with all that is going on. I just want to ask your perspective on what could be done better or what you're hoping you're able to do this season with the pandemic still going on. Ricky, you can go ahead and start.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say what can be done better. You know, it's just the reality check with the collegiate players. I've had so many recruits just bow out in the last 2 weeks. I said, sorry, coach, I can't travel to St. Louis. It's not working out, or financially I can't afford it, or pandemic has hit our collegiate soccer team hard for sure. And from the men's team, the Club Atletico team, as a family, we're looking at the summer and just seeing, like, how could we possibly put this thing together? For collegiate soccer, we'll have a season this year, but that's not built around fans coming to your game. That's about the kids. On the NPSL team, it's the opposite. It's built for the fans and community to support, and the players to have a platform. So it's the opposite effect. So a lot goes into that, and you know, the EPL. I mean, is it because of the new strain of virus? Is what
That's part of it.
You
Yeah,
guys heard? Or?
Yeah, that's part of the problem. Is it's the new strain and having
So
to prepare for that.
So they were able to control the first strain, and now we have this one. So it's hard to say what can you do better. You have new strains coming out.
Yeah, I think in terms of like the protocols, I don't want to like say something risky and be like, well, they basically, you know, they thought they were out of the woods on this situation. They kind of relaxed. I don't think they've done that. I think they've kept the same protocols. But in terms of, you know, the unpredictability of this virus, I don't think they were prepared to have this type of wave and to have this wave so aggressively take out a lot of their players and part of their season. But again, like you said, how much can actually be done and how much do you know about what could be done in terms of figuring out how to handle this. So it's a really tough situation. Luis, obviously you're a head coach of a team, but you're obviously a large part of the academy, and you have a system of teams and clubs along with the kids that really need this time to help develop their skills and progress and to be like some of those clubs that we talked about a little bit earlier. So how is it that you guys were able to get through some of the stuff at the latter half of your guys' season, what you're hoping to push forward through here as the next season comes up?
Yeah, it's been a challenge. Obviously, the fall we still got some games, and we did obviously compete. But like you said, it's delaying everything across the whole world. And then for us, I think what it's affecting the most is that we got obviously competition, but there's no meaningful, especially at the levels. For the younger ones, it's okay because they still get the games going, and I think, I mean, it's more local, and it's just the closest teams that we have out of state. But yeah, it's just the experience of playing, different teams and everything else that you usually did in the past. You can't do it at this time. And like you said, it's affecting other areas. Like you got two kids that get opportunities and get a call up and then they get canceled. So I mean, we're living on hard times, and once we think that we're settling down a little bit, something else hits back. Right? Like for example, now in the UK with what is happening now with a lot of cases with the next strain that it's coming up. So my concern is just the delay of things, because we're pushing and pushing. We're talking off the mics about other leagues, for example, that they're supposed to be ended, and now they're supposed to start the new one, and you're still finishing the old one. So it's a lot of things going on. Fortunately here for the U.S., we're still delayed until March in terms of starting a new season in MLS and USL, but still it is affecting everything and everyone. I think the most important for me, like I mentioned at the beginning, was watching games without fans, right? I think we're getting used to just watching on TV and stuff like that, but yeah, it's just a change that we're not getting used to it when we think that we're getting used to it.
That's the other part of this argument, unfortunately, that kind of combats the safety and health aspect of this, right? The financial impact for some of these leagues. Obviously, with the teams that you guys are a part of, a big part of it is about the kids or the players and their families who come out and support those kids. But obviously, in these other leagues, they're going to need to depend upon fan attendance for revenue dollars. I mean, obviously, the MLS talked about, close to, I think it was $1 billion lost in revenue last year because of the pandemic. And then you got the lower leagues like the USL that need that type of fan revenue to keep their teams going. The announcement this week was the team in North Carolina are having to drop down a league because of the financial impact. They want to keep playing, but they cannot sustain the USL level type of financial investment. So
yeah, and Coach McGinty coaches there, and
right.
I actually texted him last week because one of our Atletico guys, Brian Lopez, was wanting to try out, and I texted Mike. I said, hey, this is one of the best players that I've coached, and I really want him to get a tryout. And he said, Garza, we don't know what we're going to do. The finances is not there. We're not even thinking tryouts. We're trying to see how we're going to survive. That's the reality where we're at right now.
Exactly, and I think that the top level teams in MLS and maybe somewhat of the NWSL, they'll be able to handle these types of investments. But what we're looking at right now with the lower leagues and with there no real relationship between the leagues, they're going to kind of have to find their own way. And I bet they'll get creative. I'm sure they'll be able to find some ways to adjust, but the fact that we are back here a couple months out from these seasons starting and we are not really moved ahead on where we're at with this pandemic is troubling. And I hope that we don't see a lot more North Carolina FC situations or other teams folding or teams having to pause operations, because right now it's just not that much improvement. So it's all about that balance, right? It's about the financial stability of these leagues and for these teams, but also can you do it in a safe and orderly manner? Because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing.
It is.
Well, it'll be an ongoing story, I'm sure, for these upcoming seasons in terms of how these leagues handle the pandemic. And, of course, we got a couple guys here who will be on the ground dealing with themselves and their clubs, and we'll have plenty of updates from them throughout the season. But this is something that we'll have to continue to monitor, and hopefully it gets better here in 2021. All right, for our final segment of the day, like we said, one of the goals of this show is not just to focus on the soccer and the St. Louis soccer, but also to focus on what's going on here in the St. Louis community, and how can we help promote some of these big, clubs, companies, things like that are really helping out in the community and doing great work. Ricky has obviously been a huge part of that through his numerous dealings and his works and the companies that he's part of. Rick, I'm going to let you introduce our guest here.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. We wanted to this segment to empower and give people voice and reward people who are doing things in the community and just make sure that the people that are out there know to serve the St. Louis community. And so our first official episode of the 2021 year, I had Jorge Flores on my mind. I've had him on my mind ever since we met with a Hispanic Festival Inc. Put on an event where they asked some Latino coaches to come and talk about soccer in the Latino community, coaching in the community. And that's the first time I met Jorge and heard his story and heard his vision for his soccer club. And I wanted to give you this opportunity to talk about your club and tell us why you started this club, the Big Dream Football Club.
The Dream Big Football Club. We really just started it just with the vision to help low-income kids. That was the general idea of it. We started with my nephew and 2 or 3 buddies about 6-7 years ago, and it's developed to having 30 kids in our program, boys and girls, ages 14 and 8-year-old girls. Two different teams that have definitely made a significant impact in my life, as far as coaching goes, as far as just helping out the community and giving back to the game, which is something we fail and we miss a lot of the times. Get so busy doing everything else to tackling these problems that our sport faces. And it starts from the grassroots. So my intention was to create something, an independent football club that isn't so fond of the pay-to-play system, and kind of helps us break that up, because that's one of the biggest threats to our sport.
That's one of the things with me is I think that there's maybe a misconception amongst parents that when they see what's going on in soccer, they say, oh, my kid, they need to be part of these big clubs, or they need the best cleats, or they need to be, with the team that is playing all these types of different matches, when really they just need a little bit of a push, and they just need a place, like you said, to go and to learn their skills. So I want to know a little bit about, over the years with your club, being able to develop these kids, give these opportunities. What have you seen in terms of growth from the kids that have come into your program, their skill level? How is that going to go?
Yeah, it is. It's amazing. As far as on the field and off the field, these kids, I started with my boys kids at 8 years old, and seeing now I have 14-year-olds. They're amazing kids. And what we have done with this organization and just giving them an avenue to create positive experiences with their peers, what we have done it's just been honestly the biggest impact in their life. We go over educational things, we go over how they're schooled, we go over how they're doing at home. So we want to create this bond on a personal level that it actually becomes their own way of talking to us through their game. Their parents have been very fond of our program and our ways of how we communicate with these kids and give them an avenue to play safe. So it's been great.
And the community supports you, right? People will donate and sponsor your training sessions and things. And how many teams do you have now? What are their age groups?
Yeah. So we have 2 teams. We started with a 9-year-old boys club, and now we're on to 8-year-old girl teams. So yeah, two different teams, 30 kids in the program, and
and a lot of that is fundraised to keep that team going.
Absolutely.
Right? You're relying on that.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing with Atletico when we go out and try to do these, usually find kids who can't afford to pay to play, and there's so many of them, and you're the only one that I came across that is figuring out a way to play sanctioned club soccer. So it's not, recreational soccer. This is sanctioned SLISA, MISA players. for a club, and it's not pay to play. And so I think it's important for the community to understand that you're not just out making up your own games. You are playing with the other soccer clubs here, and you're not in that pay to play system, and it's working for you. And we want you to be able to have more teams. So how can people support the club? You know, this is your opportunity here.
Yeah.
How do people support you
So
and the vision and the mission going forward?
Absolutely. So we just launched our updated website, dreambigstl.com. That's kind of where we put out all of our information and just, have that transparency of what we do and how we affect the community and how we give back to these kids. So we have a lot of people and a lot of coaches volunteers reach out through the website, dreambigstl.com. And we're taking this one day at a time. I'm given with the COVID thing, the restrictions and things that are in place and the safety guidelines that we have to follow. We're taking this one day at a time and trying to grow the boys team as much as we can, cater them, have them in a collegiate avenue in the future, and do our best with the girls team. So we've fortunately been very fortunate to have people to support our trainings and or come to our fundraisers and stuff like that to keep us afloat. But our organization did take quite a bit of a hit given the COVID year that we were all given last year.
Jorge, obviously, you want to keep what you're going right now and have this sustainable because it's a really good base already that you have. But I'm stuck on the name Dream Big.
Yeah.
And I think that not just only applies to the kids in the work that you're doing, but also what you want for this club, what you want to continue to do. If I know St. Louis like I know St. Louis, people will always hope to support, especially the grassroots level operation, not just soccer related, but just anything that helps out in the community. What is your version of Dream Big? What do you hope to eventually get up to if you get the necessarily level support? Where do you want to take this?
Oh, I hope to impact as many kids as we possibly can. I think it's so important for kids to be given the opportunity to live life and to grow and to develop in the proper way. If you just create a safe place for them to play and a safe place for them to create memories and have something to kind of stick to as they grow and develop, I think it's so important. So if I can create a foundation or in an organization that sustains even after I'm gone, I think is the main goal. I think Dream Big is just a general idea of what you can do, how you can live life in a positive way, and just whatever you decide to do. If it's sports, it could be art, it could be business. Dream Big is literally just a general idea of positivity and just promoting being the best human being you can possibly be. And if you showcase it to the kids, you just trickle it down.
All right, a little bit of a fun question here. Do you have does your soccer fandom go anything outside of Dream Big? Do you support different clubs? Are you interested in certain things? Obviously, we'll have an MLS team here in a couple of years. Are you excited about potentially building a relationship with them, or at least having an opportunity maybe for kids just to go to the matches and see, the highest level of American soccer here in St. Louis?
Absolutely. So before I started my teams, one of the reasons I actually did start, my boys team was I was an official for, working through SLISA and just, working different soccer games high end around this region, around this area. And I think when that kind of hit me, I saw the vision of the MLS, and I was just praying and hoping that we would finally get it. And when we got it, it just opened up this whole new door of, wow, now you have to bring kids together, and we have to create some kind of a system here that these kids gotta, benefit from what we have here. I mean, we worked so hard to finally get that MLS team, so we're gonna be, on the same page with them and fully communicated, communication with them.
All right, before we wrap up, you already mentioned where people can go to find more information about the website. You talked a little bit about the fundraising stuff that you guys do, some of the events, your work obviously with Ricky with the Hispanic Festival. Any events coming up here? I know it's tough during these COVID times, but in terms of what's the next event or focus of you guys right now?
Sure. Right now, so we're kind of focused on our indoor league with the boys and getting ready for the outdoor league with the boys and the girls. So it's a lot of soccer that's gonna be hopefully ready to start and get going here. So yeah, I'm excited for that and just practicing and keeping these kids in tune. I mean, a lot of our kids are doing virtual learning, so that has been detrimental to their growth in general. So the virtual learning and getting them out of the house, I think is going to be one of the biggest goals. You know, just maybe taking them to train in soccer parks or just parks in general. You know, doing different things that change the scenery and the landscape of things. I think it's going to be impactful.
Well, you're not just doing great work, you're doing important work. I think that's the big thing going forward is the impact that you have on these kids right now at a time where we desperately need positive impact in more ways than one. So what you're doing is fantastic. We'll continue to try to give you that platform to support any information. Otherwise, in the future we can pass along. We'll make sure to do so. So Jorge, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. That is pretty much going to wrap it up for us. Rick, where can people go to find this episode in terms of if they don't get to it, immediately where we'll be able to find it?
Yeah, Atleticotv has a Facebook page, and also we're powered through LOCO Radio, and we have all of LOCO's social media. You can find us through LOCO. You can find us at Atleticotv on Facebook.
And if you guys are looking for more soccer coverage, I do have my own YouTube show, the Gateway to Soccer Show, my personal YouTube page, Joshua McGee. Go check that out, see some of the other topics that we get to, and I try to have guests on from time to time, working on a few things here to wrap up this month that should be pretty big. But hopefully, again, you can just find my thoughts. If you enjoy some of my work, you can look me up there. Our thanks to Local Radio STL for providing us this platform. Our thanks to our producer, Key, to the guys in the back in the booth, Travis and Monk, for helping us out. And again, we're looking forward to bringing this to you on a weekly basis here, talking about the beautiful game from an international perspective, from a St. Louis perspective, and like we have with Jorge today, continue to highlight those in the community who are doing great work. So, episode 1 in the books. We thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you right back here next week.
Hasta mañana.
Thank you.